So then I had the students meet once a week outside of class, minimum. Most of the time students met 2 or 3 times outside of class. Because they loved it. They loved being able to work on projects in which they were interested in, and they were very excited about it. So I said at least once, most of them met twice, some of them met 3 times. So that's pretty good. It's really pretty good. So, once a week, I met with students during my office hours. And we met from anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour, depending upon what the problem was. And so, I always asked them, okay, how are we doing? Where are we? Are you staying up to the schedule I've given you? So that and I was able to get feedback from them. I was able to assess where they are. And I would say, okay, what are you doing? What did you do this week on the project? Okay? What did you contribute to the project this week? Yeah. So I did that with every single group. So I always knew at any one time where everybody was. Okay? And that's a key element. So I think your idea was a really good idea.
They feel comfortable more if they scroll up from
Yes.
teachers and they want to know which point they are on
Yep.
weaknesses.
Yeah. There was a lot of opportunity for interaction with me and a lot of opportunity for feedback. Sometimes what would happen is I'd be at home and I'd be thinking about a particular group for whatever reason pop in my mind, and I might have an idea or a suggestion. So I would email the entire group about that because I had emails based on what group they were in. So that's really helpful. And like I told you earlier, there was a 2-part process. They had to write a term paper, had to be submitted 3/4 of the way through the semester, and then the very last day of class, I buy pizza for everybody and bring in soft drinks, and we have a poster session. And the way the poster session works is that let's say this is half the class and this is half the class. You would put your posters up along the wall, and then you would stand by your poster. Well, this half of the class came by and talked about the poster with you. Then you folks would take your posters down, you would put your poster up, and then you would go around and talk about their posters with everybody. And eat pizza and laugh and just have a great time. And then I went around to every poster myself, and I would read it, I would ask lots of questions. And then once that day was over, I would keep the poster myself, I would take it home with me, and then I would grade it that night. So I try to get feedback to my students usually within 48 hours, so they know exactly where they are.
But if they are a group for 5 or 4 groups,
Yes.
they are must to talk about the presentation of the poster every single student.
Yes.
And there is a grade for that.
Yes. Yes. So the part of the oral, there was an oral expression involved in it too. So it was good. Yes, sir.
But what would you do if you have a non-performing group? All of them are non-performing.
Oh, okay, the question is, what would I do if I had a non-performing group?
All of them.
I get really angry at them. I get really mad at them.
Would you reorganize them, put like a good student among them, using the guy, or?
Yeah. Because you're meeting with them once a week, that never happens. Because they know that once a week they have to face me. And they're going to get feedback with me, and there are times where you do have to encourage a group. So I've had slow groups, but I've never had a non-performing group. Never.
How many groups do you have in your course, maximum?
The most groups I've ever had was about 20.
20 groups. You spend each group 20 minutes?
Yes, I mean each group individually. I am a crazy teacher. I spend inordinate amount of time on my teaching. And my colleagues, when I was teaching, thought I was crazy. They did. But you could organize it so that you only spend 10 minutes with a group if you want. So it's up to you. I've showed you the rubrics. So that's basically how I did this project-based learning. But again, it is only one of many ways to do it. Okay, this is a good question. In relation to any type of group work. Absolutely. The question is, in her class, the bright students seem to be with the bright students, and the not-so-bright students seem to be with the other students. In an honors class, they're all bright. I don't have that problem. But when I've done group work in other classes, I made the decision who goes with who. I made that decision. And I usually do it randomly. I do it by birthdays. Okay, I do it by birthdays. So I'll say, okay, all the January babies, come on over here. All the December babies, come on over here. And then if I've got too many in that, let's say I've got 8 people in my August group, then I divide them into 2 groups of 4, like that. And I do it randomly. I just do it randomly. I do think there is a danger to letting students in regular classes form their own groups. And that is, they tend to be really lazy. Okay? So that's a good question. A very good question. Pardon?
Do you start with your project? Okay, do you start with project beginning of the semester?
Oh, yeah.
If you start beginning, how the students they understand the subject knowledge without teaching?
Well,
you know the students are bright.
This is honor students, so they're all bright.
What about the normal course? How we
So usually in a regular class, I do projects or problems that are not so time-consuming. So I usually wait till about a month into the semester before I start that. That gives me time to get to know them.
then only we know who is the bright and who is
Yeah, exactly right. There was one question over here. And then we're going to get to work. Yeah, that's what they do. That's what they're presenting the posters in front of an audience. And that's an important part. And that serves as a nice reminder to me, so thank you. I've just been reminded, I want to drive this point home one last time, that if I'd only done the term paper, and just said, just turn in a term paper for your project, that would not represent true project-based learning. Because you have to have a public presentation in some format. So, some aspect of the public, whether it be fellow students or colleagues. One of the things I didn't do, but I've seen colleagues do, I think it's really great. When they have their poster session, they invite not only the class to the poster session, but the faculty in the department and the graduate students in the department. So they get a really big critical audience there. So that's really, really interesting. Okay. So let's get to work. Okay. We're right on time. Now this is going to be individual work, although I'm going to interrupt you once or twice. Please turn to page 10. Please turn to page 10. Page 10 has 10 items on it. And I created these 10 items as a way of helping you think through the creation of your own project-based learning experience for your students. So for example, number 1, identify 2 or 3 general areas in your class, in a specific class, that you would like to develop a PBL for. And then you're going to focus on one of those through the rest of the exercise. Number 2, develop a small set of specific student learning objectives. Identify the specific topics you want your students to focus on. How long will your project last? It's got to be a semester. It can't be 2 weeks. It can't be a 1 week. Is the project to be completed by students in small groups or individual students or both? Is it going to be group or individual? What will they produce? How often will you meet with your students either individually or in groups to provide them feedback? Create a grading rubric. Number 10, what tools or exercises will you use to have your students reflect over their experience? A key element that we haven't talked about for PBL is that in addition to the public product that they create and the feedback you give them, you want students to self-reflect over what they learned. What did this process mean to them? So what I often do is I have students create a 1-page reflection. Here's what I learned from this project or experience. So, number 11, page number 11, what you're going to do is actually create the project. So I want you to answer the questions on page 10, and then I want you to go to page 11, and I want you then to sort of develop the entire project for the semester. I've given you pages 11 and 12, and 13 is the grading rubric that you will use. Now, notice I've given you 30 minutes to do this. Okay? And that's because I don't want you to develop the project completely now. I want you to have time to take it back to your offices and think about it. I want this to be a developmental process for you. But I want to give you the beginnings, the seed of developing a PBL for your class for this coming semester if you want to use it. So I am done talking. I'm going to call you back. I'm going to meet with you individually, not individually, but I'm going to roam around your groups. And I'm going to see how you're doing. I'll answer any questions you have. But basically, we are done as of right now, except for the writing part. I will call you back about 28, 29 after the hour, and we'll end it. We'll go home. Okay? Sounds great? So this is a workshop part. So have at it and have fun with it. Do something wonderful. Do something that will make a difference for your students. Okie doke? The whole purpose of this last 20 minutes was simply to give you a general feel for thinking about how to develop a project. It was not meant to give you a final product. So what I hope you do now, based on what we have talked about all day long, is first and foremost, I hope you go back from this meeting thinking about who you are as a teacher. And thinking about what kind of cognitive skills are you trying to develop in those students. And second of all, how are you going to do it? We've talked about how the most effective method is using some form of active learning. And we've introduced you to one particular active learning technique today, and that is project-based learning. Notice that as I've gone around and talked to different people about their projects, they're requiring more from students than what sitting in a lecture would require from them. Requiring more effort, more time, more cognitive effort, more creative effort. You're asking students to analyze, to apply, to evaluate, to create something new. All the kinds of things that we talked about at the very beginning with Bloom's taxonomy. So I see many of you going in the right direction. The topics we talked about have been really good. I thought the way you have outlined them have been really good. And I really appreciate the effort that you folks have made today to not only interact with me up here and share your ideas, but also to give some serious thought to the kinds of projects you want to do. Does anybody have any last remaining questions? I'm going to let you go a little bit early. Okay, the question for the men is an interesting one, and one that you have to really think about if you're going to do something like this all the time. Do you have the same project every semester? Because if you had the same project every semester, it's easy for students who finish the project to give that product and those ideas to the previous one. Excuse me. So you want to watch out for that. The answer is no. You don't want to do the same thing every semester. So you have to build sort of a small toolbox of these kinds of activities. And, you know, I found that usually after about 4 or 5 years, what happens is there's not that transmission of information between students. There are times in some classes where I don't have a project at all. I do something else with the time. So don't feel like this is something you have to do time and time again. To be a good project-based teacher, you really have to be creative. You have to have a number of different kinds of projects that you can use from semester to semester if that's what you're going to want to do all the time. So your point is very well taken. We have a question over here. You should not be afraid, as this lady suggested, to have two projects, like I did in my class. I had both a paper and then a poster. She was talking about a paper and then a video of some sort. There's all sorts of ways you can do that. So the main thing to do is have fun with it. You know, if you're going to have fun with it, your students are probably going to have fun with it. And as you do this more and more frequently, what you're going to find is you're going to learn from your students. Your projects are going to get better and more detailed and more significant because you're looking at what students are doing and what they're not doing. So let your project evolve. Okay? You're going to make, I tell my graduate students, the first time I meet them, I'm teaching them how to teach, I said, I'm going to give you one cardinal rule of teaching. You're going to screw up. You're going to mess up. You're going to make mistakes. We all do. And that's just part of becoming a teacher. And so as you experiment with this new project, be prepared to make mistakes. Be prepared to screw up. You are going to goof up. There's no doubt about it. Accept it, embrace it, learn from it. Okay? The last point I'd like to make before we break is the reflection aspect. We didn't really talk about that much. And the gentleman's question was, where do you build that into the course, to the project? You can do it two ways. One is you could actually make it have them do that as part of the podcast or video or paper they turn in or poster, or you could have a separate assignment where they simply take 15, 20 minutes and they write down their thoughts about how this project affected them and what they gained from it. So there's several ways to do it. Yeah. To me, today has been a lot of fun. I have really enjoyed getting to know you. I've enjoyed all your comments. I've enjoyed your suggestions. I've enjoyed working with you. You did a great job on those posters. Thank you very, very much for your time. I really appreciate it.